everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle. And for all things Healing Home, you can go to the Healing Home, michelleshealinghome.com, where you can find my blog, my store, PDFs, all things to delight you. You can find that there. Today, I'm super excited because I'm going to be joined by Melissa Sell, someone who I admire and look up to in the world of healing and health. And I'm so grateful she's here to share some of her knowledge today. Melissa is a teacher, speaker, chiropractor, and health mindset coach who applies the concepts of German New Medicine to help others, quote, overcome the fear of symptoms and adopt the mindset of healing, end quote. She also helps folks better understand the 5 biological laws of German New Medicine so they can apply them to their lives with ease. Now, for those of you who follow my work, you know that I incorporate German New Medicine quite often in the things that I do. And I was first introduced to it back in 2017 through my good friend, Mark Hanley, who has written his own book on the subject. He's done extensive research, and he's also actually translated a lot of literature from German to English when it comes to German New Medicine. And so, with this modality of healing, it took me a little bit of time to sink into it when I first learned about it. But it really did resonate with me on some level. And it wasn't until all the craziness of 2020 that I realized, oh my God, GNM is seriously such a valuable system of healing. And it really helps people get to the root of the reasons why they fall ill and what may be causing some of their major ailments. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Melissa Sell to the stream. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, how's it going? I'm excited to be here.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, for anyone who might not be familiar with your work, do you mind just giving a short introduction and letting people know where they can find you and if there's anything specific you want to put out just for the beginning of the interview?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my YouTube channel, Dr. Melissa Sell, you can look me up there, Instagram as well. My history is I'm a chiropractor. I graduated chiropractic school in 2012 and was into all things health, healing, nutrition, detox, spinal alignments, exercise, all things holistic health and healing. And I thought I had like the map on how to get well, stay well, avoid disease. And in 2017, I came across this map that changed everything. It absolutely shifted the things that I thought I knew, the reasons that I thought I knew that this was true. And it was super helpful because even in the model of health and healing that I taught to people, that I said, if you eat this food and avoid this food and avoid these toxins, you won't develop disease. And there would be exceptions. I would come out, there'd be a teacher or somebody who was like the healthiest person based on that perspective, and they'd have a diagnosis kind of come out of nowhere. And that was a very unsettling experience. But it wasn't until learning Dr. Hammer's map and the laws of nature, the laws of biology, and how tissues adapt regardless of how pristine your diet is and perfect your toxin avoidance is, that if you activate a significant biological special program because you experienced a shocking conflict that caught you off guard and you felt all alone in that moment, your body's going to adapt. And so the nuances and the details and just the level of specificity that exists, and this isn't even, you can't even consider German New Medicine a modality. It's laws of nature. It's not like something, oh, we tried this and it didn't work. It's like, no, when you look at the tissues and you look at the brain mapping, it always works this way. Anybody who's ever healed from something has healed through how Dr. Hammer discovered how healing happens is with resolution and tissue restoration. And so like learning this just felt like I should have always known this. Everyone should know this. Every doctor you've ever seen, every specialist, regardless whether they do Chinese medicine or acupuncture or chiropractic, everyone should know this map. And so that's why I was like, my jaw just dropped to the floor, and I was so passionate, like I've got to learn this, and I've got to, be part of helping other people even just to access this, because it is the most suppressed, least talked about, but most incredible system for understanding how the body works, I think, that has ever existed.
Yeah, here. Yes, I fully, wholeheartedly agree with you. And the more I study it, the more I apply it, the more I literally go through my whole entire life and apply it and then sit with it. And I look at other people in my life and friends and clients, every time checks out spot on. And if you're open to it, it really has awakened a lot of people that I know, and myself included. And so it's really, really cool that you learned this and applied it early on in your practice too, because it's just like this to me, it and you're right, it's more than a modality. And it's like the missing link almost. It is the missing link that we avoid or whatever. And sometimes I think about it of like, man, how is this not caught on more or something? And then I think about the challenge that it is to face your own stuff. And I think that that's the first thing, obviously, as you know, that comes up with German New Medicine is that it makes you analyze, what has happened, how you react to things, la da da on down the line, shadow work, all of it. And that is some of the hardest work that people can do. So for you, what was the moment you learned about German New Medicine? Was there a first ailment of your own that you applied this to and went, "Oh my God"? And do you mind going into that and explaining that for all of us?
Yeah, acne was the first one that really just struck me because it was something that I had had on and off my whole life since I was a teenager, and I went through every iteration of like what you think causes this. My mom said, "Well, I didn't have acne, but your dad did, so sorry." And so it's like there was the genetic piece of it's just something that some kids get and some kids don't get, and some are lucky and some aren't lucky. So I just had that I'm one of the unlucky ones, and I see my friends with perfect skin, and I hated the way it looked, and I tried so hard, so the commercials from TV would get in my head of, oh, if your skin is just clean enough. I see the CGI images of a bacteria going down into the skin, and that's what causes the infection. So if you just keep your skin clean enough and you wash it with acid and rubbing alcohol, you kill all the bacteria, then your skin will be clear. And so I did that and it didn't work. And so I put all this nasty stuff on my face and it bleached my pillowcases and my shirts, and it didn't clear the skin. It almost felt like luck. It almost felt random. Sometimes I have a breakout, sometimes I don't. And then I got really into nutrition. This is around when I started working at the chiropractic office and learning about, health and nutrition. Oh, and it's the dairy and it's the bad stuff in food. And so I started cleaning up my diet and my skin would get a little better. And then I'd have a breakout. I still wouldn't be drinking dairy, or I still wouldn't be eating the foods, but I'd get a breakout. And so, there's another supposed cause that doesn't check out. And then I got really into gut health and eating probiotics and making sauerkraut and, fermented foods and kombucha and all of this. Is like, oh, my gut, that's the key, is my skin is a reflection of what's going on in my gut. If my gut is just healthy enough, then I won't get acne. And I do the things and it get a little better. And then I get a breakout despite doing all of my probiotics, all my sauerkraut. And there was just another one. And then I thought it was, it's bad oils. It's bad oils in food. And every time I eat a bad oil, that causes inflammation. And that's the thing. And I'd be eating pristinely, eating perfectly, get a breakout, and again, not a consistent map for understanding. Even though these things, I'd read articles about it. It made so much sense. I was like, oh, of course it's this. And then it wasn't this. And it wasn't until this map, this description of the dermis skin, the corium skin controlled from the cerebellum that responds to a conflict of feeling attacked or feeling soiled. And I was like, oh, I can see how every breakout actually makes perfect sense. And it's got nothing to do with my gut or the food or the bacteria. And it has everything to do with my perception and my experience, how I was judging myself. And hey, I'd have a pimple and I'd be like, oh, I really want this to go away. I hope it goes away by Saturday or whatever. And I would literally get one right next to it. And then I would just feel cursed by God and like, what's the deal? But now it makes perfect sense. I'd have a pimple and then I would feel soiled. I would feel ugly. I would feel defiled by it. And my tissues, as they're programmed to do, would simply respond with another little defense shield, another little protective layer of tissue in that particular area. And now it's clear as day. Anytime I have a pimple, anytime I know exactly why. It's because, the dog licked my face and I just wasn't ready, or, I've got cows now and I just like touch my face after, and it's like, oh, I get it. I see the direct connection between my experience and the adaptation. Or if I eat a food and I judge the food and I go, oh, that wasn't clean. That's not what I normally eat, that I can I'm so capable of having an acne breakout or having a zit. But now I know exactly why it's there. I'm not concerned about it at all. And I see that connection. So that for me was the biggest and first, whoa, this is amazing. This is so cool. And now I genuinely look forward to anytime I have a symptom. The second one I had was a sore throat after being really conflicted about eating a meatball. I bit into it. It was a gross texture. I was in a group with my cousins and I just swallowed it down rather than saying, oh, I don't want to eat this and spitting it out. And so I was majorly conflicted for a brief period of time that resulted in a major sore throat. And I was like, oh, it was the conflict. It's not the food. It's not a germ. It's not my immune system being compromised because I ate sugar. It's because I was conflicted in a moment. My tissues adapted to help me. And I mean, and just from there, like you said, every single person I talk to, it always checks out. There's always a conflict, and so when you test it and that's the cool thing, is that you don't have to believe it. You get to test it. This is an objectively verifiable system that you see for yourself on your own body. And that's where, no one's saying, oh, well, I don't believe in GNM. Well, you don't have to believe in it. You just need to watch and pay attention and be curious enough. And like you said, it's easier to blame stuff on a toxin or a food. Oh, it's the food that's causing my baby to have the rash. I just need to cut the food out. And it's like, who do you want to separate from, or who is your baby wanting to separate from? That's like a bigger conversation. That's a potentially, big deal life change that you might have to make, a decision you might have to make, some relationship you might have to cut out of your life potentially in order to resolve this. And that's a lot more difficult than, cutting out gluten.
This is awesome. And I love that you went to the place of looking at when something pops up as an opportunity, because that's also how I like to look at things. Ailments as opportunities, because it's an opportunity for you to reevaluate things, to really, evaluate all things in life, just like you're saying. And that's tough, but at the end of the day, it's one of the most rewarding things. And it's one of the most rewarding ways to look at an ailment, instead of the way that usually Western medicine wants us to look at it, that, oh boy, something's wrong. I'm doomed. And now I have to go to the white coat and the industrial system to figure out what's going on. And then you're just like trapped in this sort of system that doesn't honor any of what we're talking about. And I'm so grateful to have found this, and to be able to have people like you on, because it's really important, I think, as just to talk about this stuff and to expose people more. And as you said, I like that you present it in the way of like, you don't have to believe, but literally just look at it. It's like the rubber hits the road and then you're like, all right, boom. So very cool. And what I want to do, if you are down for it, if we could go and talk about the 5 biological laws, because as you know, it's once you understand these and you start to study them, things become a little bit more clear on how the system works. So I want to let you have the floor in kind of explain these for people so that they can, start to understand and then do their own research accordingly.
Perfect. Yes. And it is. The more we talk about it, the more you hear it again and again and again, the more you'll start to see the pattern for yourself. Because that's all this is. It's pattern recognition. It's the ability to stay with something, to see a connection that before you didn't see it at all. And it just seemed like it wasn't there. But once you are watching, it's like, oh, this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And that's what Dr. Hammer discovered, and how the first biological law came to be through his observation of his own life experiences after the tragic death of his 17-year-old son. And then he developed testicular cancer. And so from the loss of his son to the testicular cancer, he just knew that there was a connection. Then he was working as an oncologist in an oncology ward in Bavaria. And so he had a lot of cancer patients. He had, was able to talk to and to look at their files and to view their scans. And he started to notice a pattern that every man with a testicular cancer, like he had some type of loss. Everyone with a lung cancer had some type of death fright shock for themselves or for someone else. So everyone with a colon cancer had some type of indigestible situation in their life. Every woman with an ovarian cancer had some type of loss. And so all of these, it seemed like, okay, this isn't random. There's a specific thing that happens of a specific nature. And then there's a specific cancer in a specific breast or, at a location of the body. And, he also worked off the premise that, okay, so if something's happening in this person's life, their emotions, their experience, and something's happening at the organ level, there's got to be something in the brain. And so he looked at CT brain scans and saw that there was a consistent pattern, that every time the person had this specific type of shock and they had this specific organ adaptation, there'd be a specific circle in the brain, and it was always there. So every time there was the shock and the organ change, there was always the circle in the brain. And so he's like, oh, as he's realizing this, he said that he went weak in the knees. He's like, am I coming to these realizations about a map for how cancer happens? And he was having dreams of his son who had passed, and his son saying, yeah, you're figuring it out. There's more for you to discover. And so he's on this kind of epic journey of seeing and like all of these patterns coming into his realization. And then, he saw it enough times, and he looked at enough files and looked at enough brain scans, and he is very meticulous, German and scientific in his approach to this map. And he wouldn't write it down if it wasn't consistent, if it didn't happen every time. And that's why, it seems pretty bold, pretty confident to call these biological laws, because laws of nature cannot be violated. They are always like that. Whereas in conventional medicine and statistics, it's like, 45% of people who smoke get cancer, or whatever that statistic might be, or this percentage of people who eat this food develop some type of cancer. And it's like, that doesn't give us any information. That says that that's a correlation, not a causation, because there's still 50%, 60%, 40% of people who eat that thing or exposed to that thing, but don't get the disease. So that is not a law. That is not consistent. Same thing with the toxin theory. Oh, it's my body detoxing. And it's like, well, not everyone who is exposed to that develops this symptom. That was actually something for me that was really another one of those little mind-boggling, I don't know what to do with this before knowing this map, was autism, because I was so convinced, and I taught that and I learned that, years and years ago in the chiropractic community that, vaccines are toxic and they cause autism. But there's a lot of kids who have received vaccines that aren't autistic. And there's actually children who've never received a vaccine that develop the symptoms and behavioral expression labeled as autism. And so that for me was like, I don't know what to make. I didn't know what to make of it. It's like, oh, well, is it the vaccines that the mother had? Is it some other toxin that have, and Dr. Hammer, he even discovered how behavioral manifestations and changes like schizophrenia, autism, come to be through double conflicts in the cerebral cortex. And it has to do with the shock. And so how one child, felt very angry or scared of the injection, perhaps another one didn't. Not every child, even though we have the same physical thing happen to us, like a vaccination, perhaps, how you experienced it is unique to you and the conflicts you had prior to that. So that is where, this system, there is a way of understanding it beyond the physical, because when we have to move beyond this materialistic idea of a germ causing disease or a toxin causing disease, because again, it's not a consistent map. This is consistent. It's experiential. What did the organism experience, what shocked them, what caused their physiology to need to shift into adaptive mode. So that when you're looking at the first biological law, it's the cause. It's the thing that sets off the cascade of adaptations in the biology intended for survival. And so it's the psyche-brain-organ connection. And so it happens all simultaneously. The psyche, which is not the conscious mind, it's the subconscious mind. It is the part of you that built your body. It's the part of you that is keeping you alive in each moment. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about your breakfast digesting. You don't have to think about, the concentration of insulin in your body or your blood pressure. The body just knows exactly what is necessary right now in order for you to maintain life. And so if something happens, that shocks you, that you were not expecting. It caught you off guard. It was highly acute. It was dramatic, and boom, that is the DHS, the Dirk-Hammer syndrome, also called the conflict shock. The conflict. This is that moment in time where you could not handle, you could not process what was happening. Therefore, your biology stepped in as it is programmed to do. And these are ancient biological programs that your ancestors adapted to their environment enough times, and so these got programmed in. If this helped just one ancestor, this tissue adaptation that we'll describe in a moment, if this tissue adaptation just helped one ancestor to make it one more day so that it could impregnate your great, 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 that means this was beneficial. It gets programmed in, it carries on to the next generation. And so we have to look at all of these biological adaptation programs through this ancient lens of when was this helpful for one of my ancestors to make it through to the next day so that I could even exist. That's how cool this is. This is like this ancient connection to every ancestor you've ever had. And so psyche, impact, we pick up on even before your conscious mind registers that a shock has happened and that you even have words to describe it. So this is not a psychological thing. This is not, something, it's not like I'm worried about something and then the conflict happens. That's not how it works. The conflict happens and the worries are basically a product of, that's the compulsive thinking that comes in the wake of the conflict. And so that's a very important point, because sometimes people will get afraid of their thoughts. Oh no, this thought is a bad thought. No, the thought is an indication of an unresolved conflict that you experience that's seeking resolution. And so, that it seems, it's like, why explain that? But it's very important to see that the thoughts are simply an indication rather than the bad thing. Because sometimes people will learn GNM or learn a couple of things and start getting really scared of their thoughts. Oh no, this is going to cause cancer. That's going to, no, it has to be, a highly acute, dramatic conflict that goes on for a very, very, very long time, or is reactivated continually, that's going to lead to an adaptation that would even get diagnosed as cancer. So psyche, brain, organ, psyche perceives, impact in the brain. So that's basically, that circle that I mentioned in the brain that you can see on the CT scan, there's an impact in that particular area. And that area controls the organ adaptation. And so all at once, as soon as the thing happens, your body doesn't wait. It doesn't go psyche, then brain, then organ. It all happens at once. And so all at once, the orchestra of your body says, we need more cells in the lung. And all at once, that starts to happen. You start to be better able to absorb oxygen. Let's say this was a death fright. Huge animal comes out of nowhere. It's chasing after me. Am I going to die? The lungs, the alveoli start to proliferate. They start to better absorb oxygen. They start building extra cells that can absorb more oxygen so that oxygen can get in your blood and you can get away from the danger. And this happens again all at once. Before you can even think about it, your body is activating this program in order for you to survive. And then when you get out of the danger, then the body has to set itself back to normal. And that's as we shift into the second biological law, it's understanding the phases. We've got the cold phase. This is right when the conflict happens. You go cold, hands cold, feet cold, no appetite. Compulsive thinking, you are like, I've got to fix this. I've got to get out of this problem, and so everything about your existence is about solving this problem, and so it's however long the conflict goes on, that's going to determine the intensity and the duration of this tissue adaptation. And the tissues can do three things. Depending on the tissue, depending on the conflict that you had, you're either going to have extra cells, like we mentioned, like in the lung, less cells, widening. Perhaps you need more bile to better digest so that you can, get out of this territorial anger conflict. So the bile duct, if it's normally like this, it has the ability to go like this, to widen. Isn't that cool? So we've got, the old brain tissues that can grow so we can make more juices or better absorb something. And then we have the lining of ducts that can widen so that something can get through, if like that's the upper 2/3 of the esophagus. If you've ever chewed something not quite good enough, like not thoroughly enough, and something's kind of stuck right here, isn't it really cool? Before you even realize it's not really going down, your body has already activated a program to either widen the esophagus or produce more salivary juices so it can better slide down or come back out. How cool is that? And in those moments, we don't even appreciate it, I think, until you have a moment where you're like, I is it gonna is something stuck in my throat right now? But in those moments, how valuable and beneficial and amazing is it that your biology has something it can do to help you internally to make it through that moment, make it through, you not chewing enough. That's how cool, that's how automatic, that's how biologically necessary all of these programs are. Like when you really think about like this, it needs to be this way. The idea of like, oh, we need to cure cancer, we need to cure this disease, we need to get rid of that. Don't you realize that every tissue change is a beneficial adaptation for survival? The thing that needs to change isn't the capacity of the biology to adapt in this particular way. It is the ongoing conflict. It's the thing that why do we keep putting ourselves in a situation we can't digest? Why do we keep living in a state that is unnatural, unbiological, that's causing us to have ongoing adaptations? That's the thing that needs to change, not the body's capacity to make these changes.
Right. Totally. I am loving this. You have such a graceful way of explaining all this, by the way, because it can be very confusing for a lot of people when they first start looking into it, or they're just like, wait, what? What do you mean my conflicts and my traumas cause these illnesses or whatever? So yeah, I just want to give you applause for that because it's really awesome to hear you go through this. And I've listened to plenty of your work, but it's nice to have you in conversation so we can talk about this like this because to me, as I said earlier, it's a key. And I also think that it's something that people will slowly start to gravitate towards as we move forward in time. Because I honestly think that, the more and more you think about it and you witness in the world, there are more people that are waking up to things. There's more people that are starting to look at the alternative ways of looking at their health. And also, what this also validates to me is my belief, and I'm sure you're in this boat too, that our body is built to heal and that we really, at the end of the day, don't have too much to worry about as long as we're responsible human beings and we take responsibility for our actions, which is one of the harder things for people to do in life. And it's a hard lesson to learn and it takes a lot of time. And I still am learning. I think we all learn these things because there's always things that pop up. Like you talked about with your acne in the beginning. It's not like you're immune to acne now that you understand this. It's just that you are so much more well equipped to deal with it when it comes up so that it doesn't become a bigger conflict that will lead to something more extreme in the future.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the idea that, yes, you're much more capable of noticing and downgrading and resolving conflict swiftly, but the whole point isn't to never have a symptom again. In December, I had symptoms, my partner had symptoms, we both we both had conflicts, and it all made perfect sense in retrospect after we, kind of looked at what happened, but we were better able to understand it, better able to, predict like, okay, this is what's going to be going on for, this period of time. And so don't think of any symptom as a failure. Oh, I failed to not resolve. This is all a learning process. And when you can look at your conflicts as an opportunity for evolution, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to learn something about yourself, learn something about your psyche, learn something about your biology, learn how to, not put yourself in a situation that's conflictive for you, making wiser choices, more biological decisions for your life, doing what makes sense. It's like, oh, this is actually a great thing. And when you can, and this is kind of a master skill as far as like, how does mindset play into this? So mindset, the way that it plays in is in this greater understanding because, you can't have this mindset, I'm never going to have a conflict again. No, you're going to have conflicts, but it's how you respond to them and what situations you put yourself in and what you make it mean about yourself if you're expressing a symptom. A lot of people, have known about GNM for a while or maybe have looked into their conflicts, but they haven't been able to solve it yet. And they are starting to get to that point of being frustrated or saying this doesn't work or, getting into this negative state about it. If a symptom is ongoing, it just means there's still something you haven't seen about yourself. There's still a missing piece of the puzzle. And if you can just stay open and curious and not get into that disappointed, frustrated, oh, something's wrong with me, or I can't figure it out, self-devaluation, and you can see how the pattern just kind of comes up again and again. And so in this work, you stay perpetually curious, perpetually open, asking questions, seeking to understand more, like being accepting, because the more you resist a symptom, the more, it happens and you go, oh, I hate this. And you go against it and fight against it, the more power it has over you. And so that's where, in my teaching, it really is, we have to work on all levels. Got to understand the biology, understand the adaptation, and then understand how we can alchemize our experience, our perception, how we're handling it, what we tell ourselves about it, because that goes a long way in either amplifying your conflicts or downgrading and minimizing. And so if you can't fully resolve something, just chill about it. Let's just work on downgrading so that it doesn't have to be super intense, because the intensity really does matter.
Yes, indeed. And one of the things that I kind of want to get into, because it can be confusing for people who are just starting off with this, the way that German new medicine views like poisoning and things like that, because we do know that there can be, somebody mishandles food or whatever happens, or you drink too much alcohol or whatever it is. But I want to kind of move into that because sometimes people can be confused with that. And then also STDs, because that's another one that always comes up for me, that people are like, well, explain an STD then. And this happens with terrain theory as well. A lot of terrain theorists will get asked that question right away. So, between those two different questions, but maybe we can, because there's STDs that are bacterial and there's this, or they're viral, or they tell us these or that or other things. But love to hear your opinions on these two things.
Yeah. So with poisonings, with toxins, if somebody has, a poison is a poison, and the body's going to reject a true poison. Now it's with these kind of like sub poisonous, like not immediately poisonous things that we consider toxic. Those to me are just, they add to the body's depletion of vital energy, like, because the body always is adapting to the environment. I mean, we have adapted to so many. Babies have 200 different chemicals in their umbilical cord blood. I mean, there's no escaping it in our modern world. But the thing is the body adapts. The body adapts, the tissues adapt, our ability to, adapt to very harsh environments, very toxic environments. The body's already like, all right, what do we need to do? Here's some new information, but we still have to survive. We still have to keep all these things functioning. And so I think that our capacity to adapt is very, very great. And so being afraid of avoiding toxins is great. Living as naturally as possible, doing your best to buy products that are thoughtfully created, using things that aren't super toxic. But the thing is even with the toxic theory, like something like formaldehyde, and they say, oh, formaldehyde causes cancer. Well, have you looked at the studies that allegedly prove that formaldehyde causes cancer? They expose mice and rats, and they shove formaldehyde up their nose for weeks on end, and they say, aha, this causes cancer. And it's like, well, you did something to those. We didn't think about the experience that those rats were having, those mice that were being, forced to huff formaldehyde. What if they had a chronic stink conflict? And so they adapted. So was it the poison of the formaldehyde that caused the cancer, or was it that you put this animal in a very unnatural, unbiological conflict state that caused their tissues to adapt in a specific way? And then you say, aha, this chemical causes this cancer. And that's pretty much what's happening with most things that have been researched as, quote, carcinogens. Are there actually things that consistently, every single time you're exposed to it, always cause a cancer? Well, no, again, we're working with percentages. This percentage of mice or whatever that got exposed to this developed this disease or this tumor. And so because it's not one-to-one, because there's a wide range in how we can react, and because we're not even looking at the experience of the animal that was tested or the experience of the people who developed something in the wake of being exposed, if it's happening 100% of the time, if everybody who gets exposed to this toxin has a very specific change within the body, then we can say this causes this. But if there is any room, if there's any people who didn't experience it, we have that's a huge question. And that's where, with GNM, we would be able, and this is my dream study, is to, take a bunch of people who are expressing, a set of symptoms. And some people are like, this is toxin, this is a detox, my body is toxic, this is a toxin thing. And take everybody and do a brain scan. The brain scan would show us if there's a circle in the brain at the area that controls that organ, we know it's a conflict. because that's how the conflict gets in the brain, is because of the shock. If it came exogenously, if it came from an outside toxin, you wouldn't have that impact in the brain. But if you're expressing the symptom, then we would know this is a toxic exposure situation. This is something that went directly to the tissue rather than this is a programmed biological adaptation. The other exception, so there's poisoning, that's an exception to the DHS, the conflict shock. Also injury. So you can have an injury where there's an injury on the body, but there's not an impact in the brain because that happened again from the outside. It wasn't something that was programmed from the inside. And then the third thing is deficiency. So if you're missing something vital nutritionally, you can have a change on the tissue level without the impact in the brain. And so we would, if anybody was putting big money into researching the 5 biological laws and really wanting to find out how the body works, we could find this out so quickly. You just get some hospital staff and students and research on board. We could do the coolest things. We're not quite there yet. The interest level, because as soon as this can of worms gets opened, everything changes. Like a huge revolution would have to happen moving forward. And the powers that be don't want to give up their grip on this yet. And so that's why we're kind of grassroots for now. But I know that we'll be able to answer these questions that are kind of difficult to answer with enough observation, research, people getting interested in it, people wanting those answers. Because just, as a collective, as we want the answer will emerge and we will find out what it is. And so with contagion and STDs, the thing that we're overlooking. So same thing with the toxin, the particles theory. It's like, oh, it's the toxin causing the problem. It's the microbe, it's the germ, it's the virus, it's the bacteria causing the problem. Materialism. We're looking at a material. We're saying it has to be physical. And this actually makes sense if you look back at like the history of medicine, is that it used to be all spiritual, that everything's a demon, everything's a curse, everything is God punishing you. And then, the scientific mind said, we are done with the God stuff. Now we're on the physical. It all has to be physical. It has to be a particle. It has to be a germ. It has to be a substance causing the problem. And we need a substance like a vaccine in order to fix it. Substance, material, because we had to get rid of, God and the spirit. And both of those approaches, all 100%, not looking, we have to look at both. We have to look at how they come together. And this, does get into bigger picture, existential, do you believe that material, that the spirit, so the consciousness, did it evolve from the material? Is this just a fluke of evolution, or has material come out of concentrated consciousness? And so that's kind of bigger question. Don't know if we want to go there, but it's something to ponder. Do you believe that the mind is just a fluke of, stuff running together and a mind has just come and appeared? Or is the mind what materializes into the physicality of existence? So something to consider. But with STDs, we always have to look at the experience of the genitals coming together of two people. We can't just look at, oh, here's some genitals, they're touching each other. This bug jumped from here to here. Now you have the disease. No, we have to look at this is a complex emotional experience that is fraught with potential for conflict shocks. And so if a person develops herpes after genital bumping, that means that there was a sexual separation conflict. I either really wanted this contact and I was really missing this contact, and I finally got this contact, and it was so blissful and it was such a relief. That resolved my conflict, or in the experience or somewhere before or in the wake of it, I really wished I didn't have that contact, and I really regret that, and I really wish that hadn't been touched. And so I really wanted to separate from it. And so that's what, skin, outer skin, this is the ectodermal tissue, control from the cerebral cortex, has to do with separation. Either I really want contact or I really don't want contact, leads to rashes, itching, bumping, herpes, all of these things of the outer skin. And so that's what we have to look at. We have to look at what was the experience, because there are people out there right now. One partner has herpes. The other one doesn't. They have unprotected intimacy often. Person B doesn't get it. How if the fact that that's possible at all leads like so many questions about, is this a contagious thing that can jump from person A to person B? because person B would definitely have it if it was contagious. And so, but if we had a shared experience, if we both, didn't want it, or if I'm afraid of getting it from you, even the fear, this goes the same for the scamdemic and the, corona scam. It's if I have the fear in my territory that you're going to give me something, I can manifest the cough. I can manifest the adaptations in my bronchial mucosa that gives me that adaptation simply because I'm afraid of getting it from you. And so we have to look at the self-fulfilling prophecy of how the fears that we have about catching something because of contact. And you don't even have to have a conscious thought of, oh, I'm afraid. It's subconscious. This is something that's been in our minds, in our field, in the consciousness surrounding you your whole life. And so even if you didn't have a conscious thought of, oh, I'm afraid, or, oh, there's something, deep down, unless you've done a renovation on all of your deep beliefs about this, you probably believe, at least part of you is scared that you could catch something from somebody else. And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. They think, oh, I'm past that. But even, that'll happen to me sometimes. I will have like a little shimmer of a thought of, oh, should I wash my hands? Or, oh, and it's so funny just to see it. And it's like, oh, I see that there. And I see how if I gave that any more energy, that this could turn into a full-on adaptation where I can actually experience the conflict and the tissue adaptation related to that type of conflicted experience. And so we're not immune from this. We've been indoctrinated. Like, I didn't come across this information till, well, how old was I? 30 when I found it? It's like, wow, this is, 30 years of thinking and believing in a different paradigm, and so that's why it's actually quite difficult for a person who's like already been diagnosed with something, serious, to kind of turn that ship around, because the stuff is really deep. And it's heartbreaking to me when a person like really believes it, really gets it, but it's only like at the top 10% of their conscious mind gets it. But like the deep part, the 90, the part that's really driving the emotional show of their experience, is still entrenched and rooted in the fear system.
Said. And, I think, man, the STD thing, you explained it so well because we are also indoctrinated to be fearful of it. It's like that is what we hear when we're in sex ed in 5th grade, that if you have sex, you're going to get this, that, and the other thing. You might not get it, but you're probably going to get it, and someone's going to get it, and someone's going to pass it on. And there's programming is just continuously, pounded into us. And I think too, like you said in the beginning, is just sex is such a deep thing for everybody, and for good reason, that I mean, when you look at it from the GNM perspective, it's like, well, yeah, it's no wonder why people are coming down with all this stuff. And then blaming this, blaming that, blaming that person, blaming themselves, which then is just going to go into what you and your partner, Stephen, were talking about in your last video. One of your last videos with the Awareness School on YouTube was about the guilt and shame stuff that comes, and then all of the cascading stuff that happens with that. So you have society, yourself, other people guilting and shaming you because you made maybe not the best choice. Now you have this thing that's happening. So then you're running the program that you're just the worst person in the world. And then all of a sudden things get worse. So, it's all very connected, and just appreciate the perspective you have with this. And one of the other things that often comes up for me, or I've heard people ask this when it comes to GNM terrain theory, is animals. And so I've had a friend of mine ask me, well, explain to me then how animals pass things back and forth. And I'm like, well, I can't 100% explain it, but from my perspective, this is what I might think, but I'd love to hear your opinion on that. And if you've ever been asked that, and you guys have animals yourself, so you probably maybe even have firsthand experience with it. So love to hear it.
Animals have a biological experience. And so it's all about, what's the experience? Oh, my dog has kennel cough. Well, what happened to your dog when you put your dog in a kennel, which is away from you, which is out of its normal environment, around other dogs, other smells, other people? Am I, locked in a cage? Like uncertainty, fear, territorial fear. So if your dog comes back from the kennel with kennel cough, did it catch a germ because it was at the kennel? Same thing with like, oh, my child's in daycare, and daycare is just a petri dish for sickness. No, daycare is an unnatural environment where your child is away from its secure territory, away from its mother, which is its source of life and okayness, and it smells different and it stinks to be there and it's scary to be there, and I'm separated from my. It's like all of these symptoms have nothing to do with bugs and germs, and it makes sense from the materialistic mind that we think it's bugs and germs, and it's a physical thing. It has to do with catching it. No, we completely overlook the emotional complex experience of the animal, of the individual, of the organism. And that's the problem. That's what we're completely overlooking, and simply, oh, well, if we just vaccinate them enough, they'll be okay. It's like, no, we have to return to our natural biology. Right now we have a big cow, and she's like over 2 years old. We got this grown cow. She's a Jersey cow, and she's wonderful, and we love her. But we got her already grown up. But recently we had the opportunity to adopt a little baby, these baby cows from the dairy, which is absolutely heartbreaking. They get like 2 days with their moms, maybe, to get colostrum, and then they're shipped off somewhere else to be bottle fed. And these babies, and I had no idea what we were getting into, honestly, when we, had the opportunity. We're like, yeah, give us another cow. We've been wanting a buddy for our one cow. It's tough. It's tough. And we had one that didn't make it, that was just like absolutely heartbreaking. She was born blind. She, came with a cough. Like these babies, they get pneumonia. What's pneumonia? Absolute fear, territorial fear, death fright. She was in the womb with these fears before she even came out. And so like my heart is just, it's so tough. And I'm in this Raising Bottle Calf Facebook group and everyone. And so what do they have to do? Tons of antibiotics and medication. And it becomes necessary. Why? To try to like deal with the physical manifestations of these adaptations, because we're doing something completely unnatural. This is not natural at all. And that's the thing that makes the medical system and pharmaceuticals like, quote, necessary, simply because we have to, try to manage these adaptation programs. The adaptations make sense. The bacteria that are present make sense. And the only thing that, medicine can do is like, okay, we got to kill all these bacteria, get rid of all of them, so that maybe these babies can make it. And so with animals, look at experience. They are experiencing something. They've gone through something, and they also reflect you. And so if you're going through something, animals, we have a Shiloh Shepherd, and he is just the most emotionally connected. He is aware of if my heart rate increases a little bit, he's just right there. He's paying attention, there to emotionally support me, whatever I need. Like he is there, absorbed, like he feels deeply. And so if I had something going on, I would always have to look at that before I'm like, oh, there's something, some germ got on him and he's sick now, or there's ticks around here. And it's not the tick. If you freak out and you're creating this energy of fear, and it's always something more. And that's the thing, is if you're interested in the something more, GNM gives you the map for the something more. A lot of people, like you mentioned, they don't want to do something more. We want to do germs and bugs and viruses and external things and toxins and food. It's almost safer because it doesn't reach that kind of core of experience. It doesn't cause you to deeply self-reflect on something. And that's really when you start seeing every symptom that shows up in yourself, in your children, in your animals, as some type of deep reflection of your consciousness that's being shown to you. It's either something to just, ignore, vaccinate against, to take an antibiotic, suppress, or to like deeply understand.
Yeah. Beautiful explanation on this one, because it always makes so much sense to me. So, but I have to keep in mind that other people are in different programs, and that's cool. And not everybody's going to come to these conclusions in this lifetime, or however you like to look at that. And it might be next lifetime, or it might be 5 lifetimes down the road that they find it. But, the way that you place this out there, it's going to help a lot of my listeners, I think, to more easily digest and kind of assimilate this information a little bit more. And so before we start wrapping up, I just want to, if you could quickly, because sometimes terrain theory and GNM can kind of get like blended a little bit. Like I know that they're different. They have differences and stuff. So maybe quickly you could just maybe talk about the similarities and differences for people so that they can differentiate the two for themselves.
Totally. And this was, I was in the whole terrain idea like for a very long time prior to finding GNM. And so, the idea that it is alterations to the terrain that causes symptoms, or it's the body just detoxing. That's one of the big things, is this idea that, oh, I have a rash. Or someone, even this came up in one of my Facebook groups, like, oh, someone asked about, what's the flu, what's coronavirus? And I explain from the GNM perspective, well, it all depends on the symptoms, because there's not one symptom that comes up with the flu or corona. It's, oh, this person has just a stuffy nose and they labeled it corona, and this person has a cough and a sore throat and a headache and they label that corona. And they, so we have to know what specific tissue. And that's the thing I love about the map of GNM, is the specificity, that there's every tissue. And when you really understand like the embryological component of this and the brain levels and how this is all coordinated, like when you look at terrain, it seems, unsophisticated, because it's like, oh, well, that's just a toxin. That's what the person said, is they said, oh, a flu is a detox. And I said, a detox from what? And what toxin specifically, and what's the mechanism by which the body is getting this particular toxin out of the body via a cough or a rash, and they don't have an answer for that. It's just, that's a detox. And for what? And that made sense to me when I was in that model before I had this map, because it's like, it's a way to reframe the symptom where you feel good about it rather than feeling bad, and so that, like in the chiropractic model too, it's like, oh, you were able to reframe pain, reframe sickness. This is your immune system working. This is your body doing the right thing. And that in and of itself is beneficial. So I see it as a stepping stone to the full freedom, which is the map of the 5 biological laws, of understanding exactly why the tissues are adapting in the way that they are. But it's still a bit of a scapegoat, in my opinion. It's still a bit of, it's a toxin, and it's just, it needs to get out. And so it needs to get out at, why this location? Oh, well, if they were exposed at this location, or there's a weakness at this location, it's still just kind of non-specific, little arbitrary, and like, oh, it's a seasonal detox. People say, oh, it's a seasonal detox. It's like, well, I don't detox every season. I don't get the flu. I don't have symptoms every season. So what's going on with me? If I don't have to, if this is just a normal, healthy thing that my body is doing, and it's just detoxing, it doesn't happen all the time, so does that mean there's something wrong with me? And so the lack of consistency, and in the way that it's described, and the lack of, okay, so if it is a detox of something, so this rash, if it was tested, would I be able to like detect what toxin was leaving my body through this rash, or through the sputum, through this cough? Is that detect? I just want to know. I mean, that would, if I was detoxing from some substance that I was exposed to, that my body is now trying to shed and to get out, would that not be measurable in that same model? And so that's another one of the things. It's this idea that you just have to keep the terrain clean. The terrain is always kind of going through these sheddings and these detoxes. But in GNM, it's specific. I know why I have a rash on the inside of my right elbow, because I had a separation conflict about wanting to hold my partner, or my left elbow because I wanted to hold my child. It's like, there's so much more detail. The cough is specifically because I had a shock, a territorial fear conflict. My bronchial mucosa widened during that time, and now it's in the restoration phase. And that's why I have a cough. The fever is a part of the healing. It's like everything has a specific answer for why this tissue, why this time, why this happened. And that's one of the main differences between the two models.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, I love that you asked the why. And that is that extra step. And that's why I've just gravitated so much more and quickly and easily to GNM because of that. And one of the things my fiance and I talk about quite often, and that he brought to my attention, was getting the sense that questions are more important than answers. And just the thought of just continuously questioning. And, you hear the cliche, question everything, question authority or whatever, and people can put a bumper sticker on their car, but are you really? And if you are, I think that you're more open to something like GNM, and to even go a step further than what terrain theory does put out there, which I think there's a really valuable things in terrain theory. And it really opened up a lot of things for me as well. But I love the extra question that comes in, the longer questionnaire, sometimes is the better. And I just, I love that. So I also want to ask you if you're familiar with the wise woman tradition of healing, if you've heard of that.
Can you no, I don't I guess I don't know if that specific line.
It's kind of there's three traditions of healing. That's what they're called. But there's the scientific tradition, which is allopathy. There's heroic tradition, which is more terrain based.
Mm,
So that you're dirty, there's a toxin, you must be cleansed, you must whatever. And then there's the wise woman tradition, also known as like the folk tradition or primordial tradition, which is way more aligned with GNM because the belief in the wise woman tradition is that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken when you're ill. It's not about that you're dirty and you have to detox yourself. It's about that you might have to nourish yourself. You may have to, as you said earlier, it could be a deficiency. So it may be something that are you nourished on a physical, spiritual, emotional level? Well, if not, then this might be the thing. So I wanted to just bring that into your consciousness because to me, that was like my basis of learning herbalism was through the wise
mm,
woman tradition because it always made so much sense to me. And it's so much more earth based and it's more trusting in the universe and in your own body and your abilities and your ancestral line and all the things. So it's just a beautiful healing tradition that kind of like brings everything back to a center point too, which is you and to
exactly.
take the
That's beautiful. I
responsibility.
love that. I really like those categorizations, and absolutely, the GNM is the wise woman tradition because, like, even GNM, it's Germanische Heilkunde is Dr. Hammer's preferred way of describing his work because he's like, it's been around for 40 years. It's no longer new, and to get away from the term of medicine, Germanische Heilkunde is Germanic isn't about the country of Germany. It's about the ancient Germanic culture. It stands for brotherhood, sisterhood, kinship, family. So that's what the Germanische is, and the Heilkunde is this healing knowledge. It's this inner wisdom, this knowing, and it's ancient, and it has to do with the ancestors. It has to do with the thing that they've always known. The Germanic people, they lived in harmony with nature. It was in their religion was nature. Their God was nature. They did not, they saw everything as having a biological purpose and meaning, and the whole society was geared around life and living. And so everything about, that's the fifth biological law, this quintessence, which is there's nothing evil in nature. There's everything is harmonious, everything has its place, everything has its purpose, everything has its meaning, everything in the body is meaningful and purposeful. There isn't evil, there isn't something to fight against. Nature only does that which makes sense to continue the game called life. And so it is a life religion, it's a life ideology, it's a life-giving philosophy, in that you have everything you need. There's adaptations when things are out of order, when we live unbiologically. Dr. Hammer called this society junk society, because everything in
Mm.
the society is about death, avoiding death, doing everything to, anti-life, antibiotic, kill the cancer, and expunge, get rid of, rather than understand, zoom out and see there's a reason and a rhyme for everything that nature does. And when you get into harmony with that reason and with that rhyme, and you are in that flow, everything goes harmoniously. And so there are specific things for us to learn about this ancient traditions, ancient cultures. They knew what was up. And we have overridden it. We've gotten, again, into scientism, into materialism. We wanted to get rid of these primitive things and have the modern things. And now it's time to kind of come back to those roots, come back to that knowing that a part of you, and that's the thing, is like, this is kind of a song, I feel like, when like an ancestral song that like reaches your consciousness at some point. Like it reached me in 2017. I was like, oh yes, this. It just harmonized, it vibrated, it resonated with something deep in my bones that I just absolutely know. This isn't something you believe. This isn't a modality. This is truth. This is the truth of nature. That's like so like inside of you and out, and it comes out at a perfect time. And so a person's readiness to hear the song and to respond to it, depends. And you're right that so many more people have been waking up recently. And so, yes, I really love that beautiful wise woman tradition description.
Yes, that's great. I love these connections. And yeah, wow, there's so my brain, I've got fireworks because a couple of the things you even said about Dr. Hammer, Oh my gosh, thinking it's a junk society. It goes along to some of the studies that my fiance has been into, which he's imparting on me, which is a modality, not even a modality, but they're called traditionalists. And they're basically all about the wise woman tradition. It would be German new medicine. It would be the junk society. That's their belief. And
Mhm.
Rene Guénon is a person to maybe look into. He's a traditionalist who believed in these things. He believed it was a junk society, that we've moved away from what we are supposed to be doing, from what the land wants us to do, and everything. So anyway, just dropping little nuggets. That's all. So we dropped some really good nuggets this hour. I'm so excited that you came onto the Healing Home. I'm honored, and it was just a blast talking to you. So before you go, if you could just let people know where they can find you again, and if there's anything you wanted to plug, the floor is yours, my lady. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Really appreciate
Oh,
it.
it was. Thank you so much. I loved your questions. It was really great. So yeah, you can find me at drmelissasell.com, my YouTube channel, Instagram. I have a whole library of courses, to help you to better apply this knowledge in your life. My partner Steve and I, we teach a class called Awareness School that is starting up again on the 22nd of January. We open it 4 times a year, but there's so many. I just encourage anybody who's like, the song is reaching you. It's like, it's time to dive further into it. This is something you want to understand for yourself, to have, because no one's going to be with you when that symptom pops up, and so you have to, if your mind first goes to fear and freaking out, you want to be able to have this map to reference. You want to know it. You want to see the next time you sneeze, the next time you have a pimple or a sty in your eye or an ache in your shoulder that came out of nowhere, knowing why it happened, pulling the thread, making the connection, so that this can be something that is embodied wisdom for you, not just an idea, not just, there's that modality GNM on mind body. No, this is a very specific and deep map. And the sooner you start to kind of dive into it, the more peace it will bring you, the more understanding. And so, yeah, any way that you can kind of take in more of this information, I highly encourage it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. All of your links will be in the description down below as well. And I wish you a great rest of your day. And thanks again. I hope to talk to you soon at some point too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All righty, folks. Well, that was a banger. And boy, have I been so excited to talk to Melissa. And I was so grateful after reaching out to her after she was actually on Beth Martin's show about a month or so ago. I reached out to her just hoping that she would respond, and she did. And here she was, and it was wonderful. And I feel like, I hope that our conversation helped anybody out there that may be on the fence with German new medicine. You don't have to move towards German new medicine after listening to this either. It neither here nor there for me. It's just that I feel like everything I've learned about it, everything I've applied with it, everything I've thought about with it always checks out for me. For me. So it resonates for me. And as Melissa said really well, it's a song. And if you start to hear the song, maybe you should hum along, right? I love that. That's a great analogy. So really, really cool. And as always, I've got some slides for y'all and some updates for anyone who wants to stick around. So here we go. Add it to the stage. All right. Michelle'sHealingHome.com for all things healing home. As you guys know, if you've been listening, I do have my handbook for herbal and natural cat care available for everybody. And, I released it. I released it on the 10th of January, and then I reread it, I don't know, a few days later just to reread it, and I saw a couple typos in there. It wasn't anything major, but it was enough for me to go, I'm gonna re-upload this. So just wanted to say that. So I emailed the people that have purchased it, but moving forward, it is a typo-free version, folks, and it's just one of those things. I can admit that I'm not a robot over here, even though we reread that thing so many times. But every once in a while, you get that little slip or whatever. So anyway, just wanted to make that known and let people people know that that is available on michelleshealinghome.com. Just go to the store tab and you'll be able to find that ebook downloadable. You can have it on your computer. You can print it out. You can spiral bind it. You can hand bind it. You can staple it, whatever you like. It's a really great introductory resource for people who have cats who are wanting to know how to transition them to a more natural, healthy lifestyle. Thank you to all the patrons out there. You guys are awesome. All your support is so much appreciated. As I always say, Chance, Sarah, Liam, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander, Spoons, Mary, Louie, Logan, Mickey, Doreen, Debbie, Natasha, Mary Beth, Nausicaa, Stephanie, Jennifer, Charlei, Peter, Elise and James, Amy, Rachel, Trisha, and Vanessa. Thank you all so very much. Patreon.com/The Healing Home if you'd like to come and join us over there on Patreon. And as I already said, up here on the screen is a photo of my handbook for herbal and natural cat care. So you can, as I said, go to the website, check that out and download it, purchase it, and then download it. And you will have that at your ready disposal when it is needed. The newsletter. So because this is a pre-recorded episode, I am not announcing the newsletter stuff, the full moon offering newsletter yet, because I don't have photos for the products that I'm going to be putting out yet, because I haven't made it. I made some of it, but I haven't labeled and photographed it all. So just wanted to shout out that there will be a new full moon offering when this comes out. This is going to be released on Tuesday, the 30th of January. So there will be a brand new offering for all of you through the newsletter. If you aren't signed up for the newsletter already and you want to, you can do so at my website on the newsletter page that you're seeing up here on the screen. And I only send out one email a month. I don't send out any other stuff. And I only use your email for the newsletter because I really don't even have the time to be using your email any other way. So just a little nugget there on that one. Up here on the screen, too, you will find my current menu, which may be a little different by the time this is released. But the full moon offering number 41 will be available at this point. But right now, I have my skin and wound healing salvation balm that is available. I just made a fresh batch just last week. I still have a couple radiant cleansing grains, 1 bar of mugwort earth hag soap, which is seriously, I don't know. I have so many of my soaps. I'm like, this is my favorite, but the mugwort, the earth hag, it's pretty up there. It's pretty glorious. Peppermint honey lip balm, clay and salt all day deodorant, and some fresh herb tinctures. I have goldenrod, lemon balm, and nettle available. And pretty soon I'm going to be decanting a lot of tinctures, and we'll have a few more available for y'all. Full Moon Offering newsletter. Coming, the next one will be out February 24th. So that will be a brand new brand new products, brand new newsletter, brand new everything. So that'll be coming to you on the 24th of February. And the next week's show, once this is released, is going to be Cara Daniels of Deep Root Connections. Now, Cara is going to be coming on February 6th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to talk about her skills as a tree spirit, an animal spirit, land spirit communicator. I'm very, very, very excited to be hosting Cara because I really enjoy her perspective on how to open yourself to communicate with the things and beings around you more easily. So I just am very excited to talk with her. Really looking forward to our conversation. So come hang out with us on February 6th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on The Healing Home. SymbolicStudies.com for all things Mario. As always, go check him out, see what he's up to. He has been so busy with design work lately. Which is a great thing, so he has been lucky enough to be able to have a lot of people that he's meeting through him putting out content who are wanting design work, which has been really cool for him because it switches it up. It switches up the clientele. So he's now working with people that are like-minded and have some of the same opinions on a lot of the things that we think about, which has been really fun for him and really cool and really, really awesome to see. So check him out for all that stuff on symbolicstudies.com, on YouTube, on Instagram, and also on Twitter. And with that being said, thank you all for being here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are feeling good. And again, as I said, I hope this episode helps you to think about German New Medicine a little bit more than you have if you've already thought about it, and maybe you're hearing about it for the first time. And I just highly encourage you to look into Melissa Sell's work. Our friend Mark Hanley, Hammer, A Critical Look at Healthcare. He wrote that book, like I said in the beginning of the episode, back in, he was writing it before he really introduced it to us, but it was circa 2017 that he was bringing this stuff to my and Mario's attention, and it was kind of like, interesting. And then it was kind of a slow burn, like I said, but I'll say it has just been one and done for me, and it really continues to shine on really strong. So there's a lot of resources also on Melissa Sell's website. She has a whole list of books where you can actually study German New Medicine and things like that as well. And I highly encourage it if this is tickling your fancy. All right, y'all, take care, and we'll see you very soon. Cheers.